Good afternoon and welcome everybody to today's webinar looking at the experience economy in Egypt. It's a webinar that's brought to you by the British Embassy in Cairo in Egypt and Experience UK. And today we're going to be taking a look at the experience economy in Egypt, both in the cultural and attraction space. And we're joined by a fantastic roster of experts who will share their experiences and knowledge about doing business in Egypt, the cultural projects and programs that are coming up, and how best for UK companies to engage in those projects. So I'm delighted to welcome His Excellency Mr. Gareth Bayley, the British Ambassador in Egypt, Dr. Ahmed Youssef from the Ministry of Tourism in Egypt, Professor Dr. Ahmed Ghoneim, the Director of the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, Ms. Saida El Harakani, who is Director of Cultural Programming for Legacy, who are the operators of the Grand Egyptian Museum, and Mr. Samuel Kirk, Director of BCI Studio. So today we're going to be hearing from each of our fantastic panelists who will share with us their knowledge. And then at the end, we're saving some time for people to be able to ask questions. But if there is something you hear over the course of the presentations, then please drop your questions into the chat function so that we can hold them and ask them at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome His Excellency Mr. Gareth Bayley to the stage to give us an overview from his perspective. Welcome, Gareth.
Thank you, Emily. It's always fun to be called Your Excellency. I always look over my shoulder to see who we're referring to. We've got some brilliant people here today. We've got two Dr. Ahmeds, both extremely well renowned in their field. Saida working with Hassan Alem Group, which is probably the premier company there is in Egypt and in this particular space that we're talking about. I'm the British Ambassador to Egypt. This is my 8th year in Egypt. I've been my second posting, so I'm the 3rd year of my second posting. I was here in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think my message to participants today is the takeaway would be to encourage you to come here, to exploit what there is by way of really fabulous opportunity, engage virtually by all means, or physically by coming here with the embassy, who are here to help you facilitate investment decisions, trade decisions. That's what we're here for. That's my primary job in Egypt. And calling us for help. That's why you pay your taxes, so that you can get that assistance on the ground from people who really know the market. So as I say, it's my second time. I loved Egypt the first time, so I came back for some more. It's obvious from the perspective of this seminar why it's attractive. You have ancient Egypt, you have beach Egypt, the seaside Egypt, and of course you have the great outdoors of Egypt, these three very obvious segments. I know Dr. Ahmed Youssef would have other ways and more sophisticated ways of segmenting the market, but there's just that sense of variety here. When I left in 2002, I think there were about 6 million, more or less, Google tells me, of tourists that could be counted as annually coming to Egypt. And today, like just last year, I think it was closer to 15 million, which was a record set, with a target, I'm probably stealing Ahmed's line, of 30 million by 2028, so only 4 years from now, to really push the limit. Why that is, from my perspective, is that Egypt in its totality has really worked very hard on two things which it was under its control, and one thing which came happily alongside. The two things under Egypt's control have been supply side, so much more work on bedroom spaces, on flight seats, on really diversifying the kind of the variety of attractions that there are in the country that tourists can visit. So that makes a really interesting supply side opportunity. And the other thing that I have really noticed from my perspective is an emphasis on the quality of the customer experience. So people coming into Egypt, I think it is fair to say, in the late 90s, would have found quite a securitized environment, quite a controlled environment, not necessarily an easy end-to-end experience, but that's really seen a lot of work. And the result has been for a visiting tourist, that they feel comfortable from the minute that they're arriving. The third thing, not under control of policymakers, but has been particularly propitious, is of course the devaluation of the Egyptian currency, which has made holidays attractive, created a good value for money offer to visitors. So I think the numbers are probably on the low side. If you compare Egypt and how many people Egypt is attracting to, say, Turkey or Greece, very easily accessible in the same region space, you should be looking at a much greater scale for growth and opportunity, which is what should be exciting you. And you, as British firms, or coming through a UK portal, you may not think of yourself first and foremost as UK. You think of yourself as offering an experience, offering a quality product. But I think the relevance, certainly from where we sit for you, is we have a really strong trade and investment relationship here. UK is one of the largest, often described as the largest foreign direct investor in Egypt. Trade is 5 billion both ways, which isn't a huge volume, but it isn't at the lower end either. And in terms of the sorts of firms that I understand are joining the call or will be working through Experience UK, that reputation you have for adding value to an experience, adding finish, adding quality, adding attraction, and adding particularly this idea to the visitor that they might want to come back again because there's something innovative, there's something new to come back to, all would be perfectly fit for what we see here in Egypt. One of the issues I think that Egypt has been grappling with has been how to get return footfall. People come, they experience a country, they see these classic things, and they think, right, well, I've done that, so why would I come back again? Not so much for the beach market. There's a very loyal crowd that will come to the seaside every year in, year out. But for some of the attractions, the big policy question for Egypt is, how do we make those innovative, exciting, and fresh enough that people say, I want to come back, I want to have some more of that. And that's where I think UK firms in this sector really have a strong reputation. So there we are. I did come on over, pile in. We've got the Grand Egyptian Museum opening at some point. We have the amazing National Museum for Egyptian Civilization, which Dr. Ahmed is the director of. We have extraordinary sites. I wouldn't even limit yourself to just thinking about the Nile sites, but also if you think around more widely in Sinai, St. Catherine's, Desert, Siwa, there's a lot of variety more widely than the sort of obvious stuff that may come to mind. And I'll end with a recommitment from my end that you should be feeling very free to call on the embassy for support. We particularly specialize in helping medium and smaller enterprises to get into the market, because the market can be tricky to understand, but when you're in, you find yourself to be very successful indeed. The flagship example of that being Vodafone, who do brilliantly here, but when they started would have said it probably was a little bit harder to get going. So there's a premium on relying on embassies to help. And that's my little intro. I'll pass it over.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. That's really a brilliant, pithy exposition of the opportunities, the growth that Egypt wants to see in terms of tourism, and those opportunities for UK SMEs, who I completely agree are so good at refreshing the visitor offer to make it a consistently exciting and changing landscape and cultural tourism. So thank you so much for that. And now I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Dr. Ahmed Youssef to the stage from the Ministry of Tourism in Egypt, who will share with us his overview of the current projects that are happening and how working in Egypt could work for UK companies. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ahmed.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me. So thrilled and excited to be here. Let me tell you, before I got my current position, I used to be the head of the Egyptian Tourism Promotion Board, which was the marketing arm for the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. So a few years back, I was working to have a kind of a brand strategy for Egypt. So we did lots of marketing researches of and insights about our customers and tourists all over the world. we discovered that we have, in fact, a great and a very strong destination brand for Egypt. And normally, Egypt is one of the bucket list for everybody in the world. The question was between maybe top 5 or top 10, depending on the nationality and the age group. But eventually, it was always there. So we discovered that we actually don't have a problem when it comes to the demand side. And as His Excellency said, we started working on the supply side when it comes to, working with our partners, tour operators, airliners, to have an ambitious air carrier to Egypt. And we indeed have plans to have triple the business through partnering with airliners and the tour operators. That was actually one of the 3 parts of the strategy axis. Secondly was building hotels very quickly to observe the amount of tourism that we want to have. The third pillar was the customer experience. Again, personally, a few weeks back, I had a look at TripAdvisor. From time to time, it's an easy way to have a kind of a very quick customer experience and insights. Amazingly speaking, when I saw feedbacks of people writing their feedbacks of their trips to Egypt all over, so I found that for everybody that didn't actually use TripAdvisor, you can have the option of writing your own review, in addition of giving between 1 to 5 stars, having 5 stars as the best, thing. Amazingly speaking, I had this hypothesis that most of people doesn't actually have a good experience in Egypt for lots of reasons. I found 87% was between 4 and 5 stars, so it was a very good result. 4% was 1 or 2 stars. So the extreme negative side was amazing to me, 4 stars. And the other was maybe 8% between 3 stars. Looking at the kind of reviews or feedback of customers, majority of people was really complaining about whether it was about more local culture and interacting with some people. And let's here say in the background, it was only 4 stars, but the feedbacks was really related to whether people need some training that are providing service, or the local culture and local community surrounding areas need some awareness. Actually, though it was only negative 4%, but the damages maybe out of that was, normally when you have good experience, you don't have the tendency to speak to lots of people. While whenever you have bad experience, you have the tendency to spread the news around. Hence, we discussed with our partners in the private sector and other governmental entities to have this kind of awareness and training sessions for people providing service. The challenge for people providing service is, because we used to have several crises from time to another, maybe the COVID, maybe the geopolitical situation in the Middle East, which comes and goes across the years. So people working in tourism are not really stable in their jobs. So you spend huge amount of money, training people and these kind of things, and you don't actually retain them. We are discussing with the private sector, how can we keep these people working even through crisis time? In addition of, spending heavily with the local communities, how to have a much better experience. On the contrary, actually, I see lots of people, for example, when they come to the pyramid, because for some people, it's a once in a lifetime experience. And this thing, I really saw it lots of times. People have tears in their eyes. And I was talking with a friend. She is a Canadian. She is actually living in Luxor and helping community on her own, and she's actually enjoying working with the local community and taking them to archaeological sites, etc. I actually had a friend coming from London a while back. Also went to Luxor and Aswan, and people invited her for their homes free to try their hospitality. So we have some challenges in the local community. However, I believe it's also a very big edge. It depends on what kind of experience, or if you are lucky enough to see the true people with our warmth and hospitality. Again, we need to spread the news and awareness. We all the time have lots of products that we are developing or under developing, like the Grand Egyptian Museum. And actually, even for cultural products, I'm not really sure how many people that visited Minya, for example. It's a 3-hour trip from Cairo, and it was the 4th capital of Egypt out of 7 capitals. With the huge archaeological places, and we have lots of even places in Upper Egypt, but we don't have the hotel capacity and the quality that we need. So we are discussing to have the long cruise from Cairo to Upper Egypt, and that will be a new product. Hence, to cut the long story short, we are trying to make the best out of the products that we have. Whether the product as infrastructure or software when it comes to legislations and educating people, in addition of developing a new product to comprehend to our customer and tourists, especially that tourism worldwide, I believe it's the biggest sector. And before COVID, for each 10 jobs created, 4 out of them goes to tourism. Why? Because other sectors, simply speaking, are going digital or automated. But when it comes to tourism, people still like to have this human touch. And for me, when it comes to tourism, I believe if we start having interaction when it comes to tourism, I believe that's not only prosperity and good economy. It brings people together all around the world, taking politicians aside. but for me, that's really an amazing thing, and I'm happy that the sector is growing all around the world. And I really hope that the Middle East will have, the whole Middle East will have the right shares, and that's for me to say. And I would like to welcome any questions at a later stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed. What a wonderful presentation. And on a personal note, it really makes me want to come to Egypt as soon as possible to enjoy the warmth and hospitality and to visit your incredible cultural sites. And on a professional note, I'm hearing all the work that you have done in terms of infrastructure that supports the tourism effort, and the potential areas for engagement in terms of UK companies being in the areas of customer service, refreshing experience design, and collaboration. So it's great to hear that. Thank you so much. And I just would like to say at this point, for people listening, please do start popping in questions. If you have questions for His Excellency Gareth Bayley, for Dr. Ahmed, Youssef, please pop them in the chat now, and we'll deal with those at the end. Now, without further ado, I'd now like to introduce Professor Dr. Ahmed Ghoneim, who is Director of the incredible National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, to share with us his reflections. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, Emily, and regards to all friends with us here. And let me give you just an overview of what NMEC, because it's a long name, National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. Just for the people who don't know, all the Antiquities museums in Egypt fall under the auspices of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, with the exception of 2 museums. the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, NMEC, and the Grand Egyptian Museum. Both of them are independent economic entities. We still fall under the auspices of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, but we have our own board, and we're economic entities. So our goal is not only providing a service, but also making money, or at least reducing losses. And that's why I'm an economist by training and profession. And here I'm heading this marvelous museum. So that's just to give you an intro on the setup, which is important for you from the UK side, because you know that the bureaucracy will be different. It will be less than dealing with the Supreme Council. And because you deal with an independent authority in this regard, which has its own board and own kind of executive administration. Number two, the museum itself is different for several reasons. Some people who are outsiders think, why should Cairo have three museums? The Egyptian Museum, the old Egyptian Museum, traditional one, and then we have the Civilization Museum, the NMEC, and we have the GEM. And the idea from a touristic business perspective is that you increase the number of nights spent by tourists in Cairo. Normally a tourist would come, he visits or she visits the pyramids, and she visits the traditional museum, and hence the Cairo as a stop for tourists would only take 1 night or 2 nights maximum and 1 day. So the idea from an investment perspective was to increase the number of nights spent by tourists in Egypt, to have more than one site in Cairo, to have more than one site to be visited. And in this regard, you had to distinguish the museums. So in the GEM, and I won't talk about the GEM, it's the largest museum in the world. It has the King Tut collection and so on and so forth. For the National Museum, we're different in more than one respect, because we have, number one, the royal mummies, and the idea of showing the mummies is different because you feel that you're in a grave with the decoration and the lighting used. So the way of displaying the mummies makes it an experience by itself. Adding to that, we try to distinguish ourselves, because we deal with the civilization in different eras that pass by Egypt. So we start pre-Destiny, and then we go through the Pharaonic era, and then through the Greek, and then through Roman, and then Coptic, Islamic, and finally the contemporary. So you visit the whole type of eras that pass by Egypt in one visit, which is again another unique experience in this regard. This you won't find in any other museum in Egypt, or maybe in a number of museums all over the region. Here you won't find a civilization museum designed this way. The third issue which my team worked on, and since we opened ourselves, is that we try to distinguish ourselves and position the museum in a way different in several respects. First of all, we try to change the general perception that, as Gareth mentioned, normally if you visit a museum or you visit a site, and as Ahmed mentioned, the pyramid, that's it. We try to make it not only one visit, but it's a repetitive type of visit, but you have to have something different. And in a museum, normally you don't move antiquities a lot, so we depend on other activities. We played with the word civilization, we played with the word heritage, we played with the word culture, and then we started to do different type of events, which can take shape of a concert, which can take shape of an exhibition, an art exhibition, a photo exhibition, which can take shape of different workshops dealing with crafts, handicraft, and traditional stuff. So in that sense, the visit to the museum ended up with not only once, it had as well in indirect marketing, where people come to visit the museum for different reasons, not necessarily for having looking at the antiquities, but to enjoy other issues. And we provided this with some kind of a small mall that sells only handicraft and things related to heritage, as well as dining or food places, so that people can enjoy a whole experience. The final dimension that we added is the cooperation with the different countries in the world through the embassies, where the embassies cooperate with us in bringing the culture of the different countries into Egypt. So, for example, we have at this moment an exhibition which shows the Peruvian tradition and culture through different type of artwork that is done, and the similarity with a similar work done in Egypt. In that sense, it acts in an indirect way of marketing. For investment purposes from your side, since our aim is economic as well as cultural, we have a lot of halls that still are not open, a lot of galleries that can be opened, and we aim to change the perception to have it more towards digital type of experience. So it can be hologram, it can be virtual reality, what you name it in this regard. And in that sense, there is a room for investors to come in, because this costs a lot. There is a huge rate of return, but it needs an investor with a specific type of mentality that understands how to attract people in this regard. And we have this room and we have this ability because we use a lot of technology. So in this regard, the room is open for cooperation with the UK firms in this regard. And the facilitation of being engaged with an investor, whether domestic or foreign, is easier made by the institutional setup that I mentioned at the beginning. Our visitors on average are between 1,500 and 2,000 visitors per day. We can have more, and we're intending, and we're opening new exhibitions in the very near future. Within less than 1 year, we will have another new hall opened, a gallery opened. So we're open for all type of cooperation in this regard. Thank you, and I hope I didn't exceed my 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Professor. That was, again, a really enlightening presentation. And again, personally, I envisaged myself walking in those immersive galleries, experiencing the mummies as they have been discovered, and added that to my bucket list. And professionally, it's amazing to hear the extent of your thinking about public offer and how far you've gone with that already, and then the opportunities potentially for UK companies to partner in the digital realm. And it was very helpful to hear about the change, the slight change of economic entity for the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, and how that might make life easier for UK collaboration. So thank you so much. I'd now really like to welcome Saida El Harakani, who is Director of Cultural Programming for Legacy, who are the operators of the Grand Egyptian Museum, to share with us her perspectives. Welcome, Saida.
Thank you, Emily, and hello, everyone. A lot of similarities with the GEM, as Dr. Ahmed Ghoneim of NMEC has mentioned. But slightly differently, I work for Legacy. Legacy, as His Excellency Ambassador Bayley mentioned, is a Hassan Alem company. Hassan Alem is a big conglomerate that operates in construction, utilities, clean energy, etc., and formed this company to manage social infrastructure as a means of giving back to Egypt and giving back to the cultural revolution that's happening in Egypt. So we operate the Grand Egyptian Museum, and when we say that, this entails obviously facility management, but it also includes visitor management, so the experience of the visitor, from dealing with tour operators, bookings, the websites, etc. And also we manage the experience, so content creation, whether it's through exhibitions or experiences, etc., or it's through thematic tours in the galleries once we open. Another caveat that's quite important is that we're still not officially open. We've been in what we call the trial launch for the past 2 years, where the main hall and the grand staircase are open. The grand staircase is a small open air gallery of about 60 artifacts. So technically, that's what's open and available to visitors, but also the other side, which is the culture side. So we also manage investment management, business development, and innovation for the Grand Egyptian Museum. When we talk about the museum, we talk about it as a destination. So it's not just a museum of ancient Egyptian civilization, although it is the biggest in terms of size dedicated to a single civilization. But we're also a cultural hub that celebrates the contemporary culture of Egypt with a strong focus on creative industries. And nobody knows this better than the UK, the importance of creative industry and the creative economy, having one of the most robust economies and reliance on the creative economy. And when we say that we have a strong focus on the creative economy, we say we support the arts, crafts, design, and gastronomy as a cultural product. So we honor the past through the galleries. We have 3 main galleries. The main gallery, which is a survey of the entire ancient Egyptian civilization from pre-dynastic to Greco-Roman period. We have the entire collection of the Tutankhamun collection. And we have the 3rd main gallery is the solar boats. So the Khufu solar boat has been moved from the pyramids and is housed permanently here at the Grand Egyptian Museum. And there's another solar boat that that was discovered in smaller pieces, and that will be conserved live in front of audiences over a period of 4 to 5 years. So it's very experiential. When we talk about celebrating the present culture, we talk about cinemas, theater, music concerts, art galleries, workshops in arts and crafts, etc. And that's quite visible when you come to the museum, where the ground floor, there's the main GEM gift shop, but also there's this avenue that's dedicated to the best of Egyptian designers. So really strong focus on design and craft of the now, not just of the past. And we say we also inspire the future, and that's very important for us. And we do that through learning. So the Children's Museum, the Learning Center for adults and for children, where we have a learning center. We'd like to set up a digital lab. We're setting up actually an innovation and creativity hub, which is a co-working space with possibilities for production, networking, inspiration, learning, etc. within that hub. XR experiences. So we've already hosted the Tutankhamun immersive experience that was produced by Madrid Art Digitalis. But we're open to collaborations on any of these XR experiences that would bring visitors back and back and back again, not just tourists, but local visitors that are very important for us as well. In addition to the past, present, and future, we have a lot of services at the museum. So dining, fine dining, a hotel, commercial spaces, etc. Now, if we look for opportunities for collaboration and partnership, so we classify partners in different segments. So we have sponsors, like typical straightforward museum sponsors. We have partners, and these partners could be thematic. So, for example, entertainment partners could be someone who would partner with us on the events arena and host like a year-long calendar of concerts. Partners for the cinema, where we would show films, but also co-produce documentaries. It's not just about what we could showcase, but what we can create together, giving access to the collection, to different themes, etc., where we can also license for global expansion on these co-produced products. We're happy to host events, etc. We look at different spaces where partners can come and help us set up these spaces. So whether it's a tech partner who can help with the screen and sound and light equipment, or someone who can help us set up the digital lab, or for example, 3D printing in the innovation hub, set up the sound and video editing studios in the innovation hub, and so on and so forth. We're also looking for potential for partners for events, cutting edge events that are quite new to this region, like e-gaming, hosting these kind of competitions, like using AI in creating like AI bots for the audio guide. So really the potential for collaborations are endless, whether it's spaces, whether it's events, whether it's experiences, and also very importantly on sustainability. So sustainability partners, simple solutions from how do we supply drinking water that in a sustainable manner instead of replacing the plastic bottles, to our visitors, to solar paneling for the parking areas, etc. There'll be plenty of opportunities for us to discuss, I guess, specifics in the Q&A. The one question I beg you do not ask is, when are we opening? So quite a difficult question that I will not be able to answer. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Saida. Again, another really enlightening and exciting presentation. And I just love the idea of the live conservation of the solar boat. Again, that's another thing for my bucket list for the visit. And so interesting to hear how your economic structure is really enabling and opening up opportunities for partnership and co-curation or co-creation. I think UK companies on this call listen out for those the opportunities in the innovation centre, and particularly the digital side again. So without any more of me waffling on, I'd like to introduce Mr. Samuel Kirk, who's director of BCI Studios, who will give his experiences of working in this region and share some great examples for us to learn from. So thank you so much, Samuel. Over to you.
Thanks, Emily, and good afternoon, everybody. I mean, to start with, I just wanted to sort of echo exactly what His Excellency Gareth was saying. Having worked for near enough 20 years now in Egypt, our businesses, we have a lot of passion for it. I love it. It's been a wonderful experience for us. So as Emily said, I'm co-founder and owner of BCI Studio. We're a creative agency. We've been involved with a lot of new development work across Egypt over that period. And we also have a brokerage and real estate advisory business. And we also run something called Opportunity Egypt, which assists with effectively companies, investors and the like who are interested in bringing whatever it might be, their expertise, effectively a particular skill set or a developer of a certain ilk effectively, and working very closely effectively at governmental level. So we have a really good relationship with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Communities. We work closely with the Ministry of Transport in Egypt. The New Urban Communities Authority, we've done work with them, particularly in New Alamein in Egypt's north coast. And most recently, we're working closely with the ACUD, which is the Administrative Capital for Urban Development. And there we work with the CEO, Engineer Khalid Abbas, and his team effectively to help promote the great work that the guys are doing there. Our work is probably a bit different to the esteemed colleagues on this call this afternoon. Most of our work in the construction field really works with and providing for the ever-increasing Egyptian population. I've got a short video that hopefully Ian might be able to just sort of play for us now, but this summarises the role that we provide, and we've assisted with the ACUD over a number of years at MIPIM, which is a big property conference effectively in the south of France. And there, the ACUD worked with us and a number of other international agencies effectively to help promote inward investment effectively into their development. And it's a prime example, Emily, of how open and willing our clients are effectively to work with international experts. And it's great fun. So Ian, maybe you could just play that briefly. Thank you.
I'm happy to be here maybe for the second year. I'm very pleased to show everybody what we have done in the last year and the investment opportunities available in the new capital.
But also to announce that more mega projects are in the pipeline. With 50,000 government employees and 12,000 students commuting daily into the city, as well as resident families, services, shopping malls, we can confidently say the new administrative capital, a dream come true.
So hopefully you can all hear me again. And so as Hanan, who is the advisor to engineer Khalid was saying, there's a huge opportunity effectively within the ACUD, effectively what is being built there. They have a new City of Arts, effectively, and a most stunning opera house, which I was very lucky to visit the last time I was in Egypt about 2.5 months ago. Egypt-wise, and specifically in Cairo, I'm a retail expert by background, retail and leisure expert. There are all of the major international players you'd expect in shopping centre buildings and such, likes of Majid Al Futtaim Group, and big developments with opportunity within. And in that instance, it is very much serving Egypt's population. So the role we perform there is effectively bringing in new concepts in leisure and entertainment, and finding opportunities for them within those developments. New Alamein, as I said, as well as another wonderful North Coast example, and there the focus is very much on conferencing, on hospitality, and everything effectively that goes with it. So there's huge opportunity there, as well from an education perspective. Cairo itself is undergoing significant change at the moment. The Sovereign Wealth Fund of Egypt has an incredible task, effectively, as a lot of governmental ministry buildings have been moved to the new capital. It opens up opportunities for new enrichment, effectively, within the capital itself, and we've been seeing a lot of examples of that. There have been some big opportunities with international hotel operators in and around Al Tahrir Square that have occurred over the last couple of years or so, and major infrastructure investment. So the opportunities vast, Emily, and we've loved doing it. And if people are interested in knowing more about it, please get in touch.
Thank you so much, Sam. Again, really generous of you to share your experiences, and also to share your willingness to speak with other UK companies to understand the market a bit more. And thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I find that's the best bit, Emily. I don't profess to be an expert in everything. I'm really not. But the best way in the world to do it is effectively to bring in others, effectively to assist and to help. And so that's always the way that we run our business.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, I'm just going to review the questions that have come through the chat and see if there's anything that needs calling out to the people who are listening. So there's a few, a couple of participants have requested essentially British Embassy support in a couple of their business development trips, and I would suggest that people go on to that chat function to garner the appropriate emails for people. So Charlie Garnett within the FCDO team who can help connect businesses wanting to connect into Egypt. And then there was an interesting question here from Norma Gregory to Ahmed Youssef, asking whether there is a demand for museum interpretation that features more inclusive stories, diverse voices, women's heritage and environmental education. Actually, maybe I could open that question to you, Ahmed, if that's okay. If you could share your reflections to us on in person, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Which Ahmed? Myself? Or
oh, sorry. Yes, yourself, Ahmed Youssef. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Well, currently the majority of museums provide, that is owned actually or supervised by the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, are strictly for antiquities exhibitions. We have different kinds of museums that are related to other ministries, like the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of Culture, that provides other kinds of activities when it comes to paintings, for example, or music, or other kinds of or activities. With the exception of contexts like, supporting economical activities, like the one that happens in NMEC, for activities to generate profit or a side business to make sure that we have a healthy financial flow. But when it comes to like said here, environmental or workforce or whatever, sometimes we work with organizations like the UNESCO or the UNDP for environmental activities, or donors like the EBRD, USAID, and other entities, to provide such services and help for communities or local communities, handicraft and other kind of things. So I suggested for Norma to maybe get in touch with these already established organizations. They have the right connections, the right network, and the know-how in Egypt to provide their services through these organizations. It will be much more efficient and very quick until she or the organization she works for establish their own connections in Egypt and adopt the know-how. Maybe they can customize or develop a new product or service they can provide for the right target group.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Saida, do you have a reflection from the perspective of the Grand Egyptian Museum and Legacy Hassan Alam?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we work with the heritage, but we also really focus on contemporary culture, and a big part of that is crafts. So the support that we do and the focus that we do is allowing spaces at the GEM to be available to anyone and all different stratas of the economy and all different governorates to showcase their crafts, whether it's women or it's other minority groups from different governorates around Egypt, Sinai, the South, etc. And we work closely. We've worked with the National Council of Women, who have kind of like a oversight over all these craft organizations that mainly support women and try to work on their economic sustainability through the craft. We work with, for example, private sector companies who, like, for example, we have here at the GEM, Kahal. Kahal is have a very long history of carpet making in Egypt. They're a private sector company. They sell carpets, but they work with local artisans and craftspeople and women, etc. So we will work closely with them to showcase the work that they do on the ground, grassroots, with preserving these crafts. We have a list of the crafts that we want to focus on, etc. And in a way, everything that we do, even in contemporary culture, has a thread and is linked to the past. And we soon realize that there's a lot of living intangible heritage that we were unaware of, or that mass audiences are unaware that these crafts that we see today are living heritage from ancient Egypt, really. So happy to discuss any opportunities or projects that you'd like to talk about in that area.
Thank you so much, Saida. That's really enlightening. And I wonder if Professor Ahmed Ghoneim had any comment on that from the perspective of the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization.
In fact, we do, part of our role is to enhance what we call the surrounding community as part of the social corporate responsibility, and we invite, because we are located in Fustat, which is full of handicrafts and people doing different type of artisan work, so we invite them to have workshops. That's number one. We have initiative called Egyptian Governorates, where we invite people from the different governorates in Egypt to show different types of handicraft in different parts of Egypt, and they come and show what they do. And in some cases, they are able to sell and have their marketing channels with other subcontractors from Egypt. Adding to that, a lot of NGOs who are dealing with handicrafts come in and have their own exhibitions here in the museum. So adding to what, like Saida said, we have different types of carpet making from different families all over Egypt, showing in a showroom in the mall that we have. So we're using the museum in a different way, where we show the tradition and heritage of Egypt in a clear way and in a very subtle way, that people see what actually can be done, and as well from a business perspective where they can sell their stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And now there's a question from Laura Watson, which maybe I will first of all direct to Dr. Ahmed Youssef, which is there a ministry-led training program for the sector? So recognizing the comments that you were making about building visitor experience and customer service experience, is there a kind of formalized training program?
Well, we have an entity in Egypt, the Egyptian Tourism Federation, which represent the private sector. They have 4 main chambers, one for hotels, one for companies, etc. And we actually leave that to the private sector. Why? Because for hotel chains, for example, if you have a global hotel chain, they have their own standards when it comes to training and development for their own staff. And even for local hotels, they have their own training. All what we need to do is our role as a regulatory part to tell them that whether we are satisfied or not satisfied about the standards of services and the training of employees, and we leave it up to them how to choose the suitable program for developing and training their own staff. We here mention that 98% of the tourism facilities in Egypt is owned by the private sector, so the country here is not intervening in the ownership or even how to run their own business. We believe that the private sector is more smarter than the government in all ways. So, but eventually it's really up to us to make sure that the quality and the development of the facility and the staff working is going into the right direction. So if there are any proposals, you need to talk with the Egyptian Tourism Federation, and I will be happy to connect you to these to our partners in the private sector.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed Youssef, much appreciated. Now, I think we're coming to the end of the webinar, and I would just like to ask each of you to comment in a sentence, if you can, on what would your kind of go-to bit of advice be for a UK company wanting to develop a partnership in any of the areas that we've talked about on this call within Egypt. So I'm going to start with Your Excellency, Mr. Gareth Bayley.
Well, the obvious one is and we've put the two names into the chat here to give us a call. We're here to help with that market intelligence. I think Egypt is increasingly straightforward for any company of any level of basic competence to come here in a 4-hour, 45-minute flight, including on low-cost carriers, and just get stuck in. But we are here to help you understand quickly and efficiently what's possible, and to connect you up with people, and to sort of help clear up any sort of misconceptions you may have before you start your calls. That's a specific, come and see us. And the general one is there's a really intense drive to diversify experience opportunity around tourism. I think the challenge, the pyramids were ancient when Cleopatra was alive. So the challenge with these attractions is that I think the prejudice is, well, that's static and there's nothing we can really do to enrich that experience or make it repeatable. But that's the drive that I see from the council, from the ministry, from the independent museums, from the contractors that work with them. So for anybody on this call and anybody who you know in that sort of sector, Egypt should be close to the top of your list in terms of smelling out the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And Sam, what's your kind of one sentence bit of advice?
I was going to refer to something that Gareth mentioned earlier in the Egyptian British Chamber of Commerce. They hold some superb sessions, probably more often than quarterly, but in London typically. And they bring across some really esteemed speakers. And it's a wonderful cross-section of people in it. We've been to many now over the years, and normally breakfast sessions. But I would say that's a nice way just to sort of start to better understand where those opportunities lie. I think Gareth's team in Cairo are superb. If you're lucky enough to be invited to the embassy, I'd definitely take him up on it because it's extraordinary. I mean, I think the only thing to say is don't try to do too much, because Cairo alone is an enormous city, and you'll stretch yourself. But there are some great opportunities, I say, not only in the tourism and the sectors that everybody's been talking about today, but in the modern development pieces, the 2030 vision that sets out the objectives effectively of the country, and the new cities they're building are extraordinary, and there's great opportunity in them too.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Ahmed Youssef.
Well, let me tell you that I worked in different sectors before in Egypt: retail, consumer electronics, oil and gas, and now in tourism. Yes, as Samuel said, we have lots of potential in many ways. Our economy is really diversified: manufacturing, tourism, services. So the potential is huge, especially in tourism. We have unparalleled products that is not explored, and we have lots of potential. Currently, we have lots of UK visitors to Egypt, but I really want to see a serious investment in the infrastructure and tourism in Egypt. We have a long partnership, and especially when we had Thomas Cook, but now we are developing with EasyJet and lots of other partners in the UK market. But I want to see not only tourism coming, but tourism investment. And again, that's a huge edge for Egypt, much more even developed than agriculture or manufacturing or many other products. And if you succeed in Egypt when it comes to this kind of business, let me tell you that lots of countries in the Middle East are copying our experience in the Middle East and Africa region. So we are masters when it comes to tourism services and experiences. So if you succeed in Egypt, make sure that you will succeed in the Middle East and in other parts of Africa as well.
Thank you so much. And Professor Ahmed, Ghoneim, your one sentence top bit of advice for UK companies wanting to work in Egypt?
Well, actually, I would just add to what has been said that the potential is untapped, and I'm not talking about traditional way of thinking of museums in this regard, but rather I'm talking about the entertainment business. I'm talking about the digital type of business, the innovation business. Museums are not traditional in the sense of they used to be. They are ways of exploring new venues where people all over the world, as we see the economic and political situation, are reverting back and against globalization to authentism and traditional stuff. And hence the room is open, since there is the know-how and the money. The potential is untapped in the museums, using them as a ground for growing a new, unique business, that it is definitely a niche that needs to be explored.
Thank you so much. And finally, Saida El Harakani.
Yeah, I would say any partnership, any business opportunity is not small. Yes, this is the Grand Egyptian Museum, but even if there's an expert in a particular field that would like to come and do a talk here at the GEM, we're open to that. So no idea and no collaboration is small, from small to big. And on the other front, from a practical, pragmatic point of view, yes, we've been through several devaluations, and Egypt is cheap for tourism and for investment. But on the other hand, it's quite expensive for us as an Egyptian destination to fund and finance in foreign currencies. So we need creative ways and ideas of how we can collaborate, how we can partner, etc. So no idea is too small, and flexibility and creativity in the forms of partnership, I would say.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful way to end. Creativity and flexibility is absolutely what the UK experience sector is all about. So thank you all so much for your time. It's been an absolutely enlightening and brilliant webinar. Thank you so much to His Excellency Mr. Gareth Bayley, British Ambassador in Egypt, to Professor Dr. Ahmed Ghoneim, Director of the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, Dr. Ahmed Youssef from the Ministry of Tourism, Ms. Saida El Harakani, the Director of Cultural Programming for Legacy, who operate the Grand Egyptian Museum, and to Mr. Samuel Kirk, Director and co-founder of BCI Studio. You've all been fabulous today, and thank you so much. And we'll say goodbye and hopefully see you in Egypt.
Hi, everyone.